Whatever? No? Okay. This morning we're going to talk about transferring our lives as spiritual presences, which is what we are forever and ever and ever. We're going to do a little formula in the very beginning that will decry, that will make it that we are going to live the rest of our life at least 90% on the spiritual side rather than 10%. Because people think their spiritual life or the religious life is 10% of their life. And today we're going to make it 90, and for some of us, we're going to make it 105. Okay? So, you know, like late in the day when the hours seem to lose their foothold and you're in a little calmer place after you left work. If you realize those times and see how time just floats by, and you're more conscious of it, and stepping back out of your reverie and enjoying it, it's like being in love. You're just waiting for the one you love, and it doesn't matter all week. The day-to-day stuff means nothing. Spirituality is a deeper state than love. There's an equanimity to it. There's a beginning and end point of it that begins and ends in eternity. There's no time sense. It's just a pure state. So we're simply going to tell ourselves to recall this understanding, this wisdom of the divine every day, every moment that we reside here, which isn't here. If you read the writings of all the mystics, the saints, the world really isn't here. They have these near-death experiences that a friend of mine related yesterday. And that's the reality. And you just simply have to toughen yourself up to be there. My friends here are the toughest people I know. Physically, we're in a gym right now. We're surrounded by noise and weights and martial arts and jiu-jitsu back here with my teacher, Pedro. And it's all action. But because Pedro and Carlos and Greg here are all completely spiritual, their work involves helping people, being present. So when you're around the martial arts atmosphere, there's a joy, there's a happiness, there's a family sense. It's a spiritual discipline. It's not just individually lifting weights and wanting to lose weight and, you know, look a little better in your shirt. It's something completely different. There's a formality to it, and a decency to it, and an honor to it, and an integrity to it. So everyone I know involved in the arts are who are not just wild kids that just want to fight and beat people up and learn some basics from someone. It's a lifetime of surety. In other words, there's a positiveness to it. You're going to grow, you're going to become better, you're going to become more human, more aware, more kind, more fulfilled. The day-to-day bull stuff is not going to bother you. And this is one way of disciplining yourself and not falling back into the mainstream of being a worldly person, just waiting to have the next drink or whatever it is. And then when you have love, you're going to honor love. It's not lust anymore, need. You're in awe of the person you love, of your family. And you pull back from all of that. You don't get lost. We talked about 90% or 10%. You don't get lost in the 90% that everyone, there's just, they used to call them a working stiff. You go out to work and you do it for your family and out of love, but there's no real pleasure to it, except you must do it for those you love. In spiritual consciousness, which is what we're talking about, there's an ebullience, there's a openness, a happiness, a joy, even going through the worst possible circumstances. My teacher, Pedro, he's the most spiritual person I know, and he's a fighter all day and teaches fighting. It's quite interesting to be a human being like that, because he manages to bring 95% of himself into the world happily and joyfully because he's not afraid of anything. He wants to, and it's not because he's tough, it's because he wants to lift, he wants to fulfill, he wants to enlarge himself in the world through his body, so he's not his body, if that makes sense. That's why he can play chess with his limbs in a way that I've never seen. And it was a gym full of great athletes, like the boss here and so forth. And it's spiritual discipline. Van Gogh used art. He would study, and the great Matisse, all the arts of the great ones, they'll sometimes, like with Van Gogh, 20 years he studied with charcoal, with pencil, just to get a sense of the dimensions that he's going to be filling in with paint after a few years. And you sit there, the lighting, he'll go to Italy for 2 weeks, a certain time of the year, because of the lighting and the color and the hills. And he said that your life is not what you make not what brings you a paycheck, but it's what you have a passion for, that you're so passionate about that it becomes spiritual in calling. So if you see his works, if I've seen in museums, I'm stunned. It's more powerful than the gorgeous rock works I've seen of Buddhas in the Himalayan mountains. It's stunning, because he did what Pedro did with his body and self and teaching methods. He did on a piece of canvas with paint. Such beauty, such power, such dignity. It's like an erudition of the spirit, if you know what I'm saying, in writing. There's so much said. I used to go up at the city with my buddy Robert and see at the Palace of Legion of Honor, there were paintings there, one by El Greco from 1510 of John the Baptist, and it would be like Pedro there, just gorgeous form, powerful athlete body, but every inch of it says something deep and meaningful and relevant to human spiritual consciousness and existence. And you'd have to look at it. Everything you know about them from the scripture, or everything you know about spiritual people or creative people or powerful human beings, you'll see in that work. And every square inch, even though it's huge, is filled of meaning. So Pedro has that in his life, everyone in this room has it in his life, and it's a dream to know people like that who are not taken in by all the temptations of the world. The world is a temptation, like I've said in many classes. The world, think of a sociopath. I recommended the book with The Sociopath Next Door. In other words, they don't care what you think or feel, and they get away with stuff, and you can think you're in love with someone like that, and then they'll use you and abuse you. It's quite interesting, because they can elicit those feelings from you. And this is a very mystical thought here, if you can follow me. And if you think of the whole world as a sociopath, it just wants to take you in. It's like the temptress. It's like, it just wants to gather you in and get you interested, and then you take sides, and you don't have to go there. You can be as quiet as the last sound, the last moment of the earth. It is the last time. It's very simple to know God. And all you have to do is be you. And it has nothing to do with the world. There's nothing to prove. Nobody can question you when you're here. It's like a sweet afternoon, sunlit wind on the hills up here. It's just sweet. You know, when you love someone, you cherish that person. You adore that person. You don't want or need the person, you just respect them. My friend Susan Slump, she got like the first woman to get a doctorate in political theory years ago in Stanford, whatever. And I looked at her like just in awe. Or my friend Susan George, she's a city manager. I look at them in awe. They're not because they're beautiful women, because they're friends, but they're like so good underneath it all. Or Pedro's wife is the most, I just can't believe someone like that exists in this world with that amount of spirituality. But then each of us have a little bit of a case. You know, I have my history with doesn't mean this or that. Everyone wants to know I'm about. I'm always embarrassed about my past, because I don't think I'm anybody or anything. But if you step back into your past in reverie, then you'll heal it. And that's part of what we're talking about today, of making it 90% rather than 10% in the spirit. If you look back, with respect. No one has the right. God never gave a human being, a demon from hell, the power to question you. Don't question you. You walk in a room, you got to be this way, that way. Sweet, my buddy Gabby here is the sweetest, most spiritual person I know, and she's very tender, and people don't know it, but I know it. So Gabby is my teacher, and she knows that. And so I honor my friends in a way that has nothing to do with anything about their life. It just is. And I'm the most ordinary person in the world. I'm just a young kid from South Philadelphia. I mean this with all my heart and all my soul. I know I'm nobody inside. But because of that, I'm able to glimpse eternity all day. It's very nice. He's a very sweet person. And he's always present. And the world is a sociopath. Give it nothing. It doesn't mean fight it, it means you can work out with Pedro or Master G, as Carlos calls him. It's Carlos's teacher and our teacher. He runs this gym, general manager. Greg here, and you just very quietly do the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And there's no time in between. It just, in other words, he's not bringing his case, his situation with his family or money, and then when he's dealing with people, he stops and he's there with the next person. And you can call professional behavior, it's just there's an isness to it. And because they've been in the ring, they've got more ring time than one of those old sequoias, you know, like so they're very relaxed about life. They're not afraid of anything. Like the average guy is like, Rob doesn't have it because he's a monster, but you're concerned about walking in a room. You have, maybe you have to watch what you do or say, and all these things are imprinted from birth. They're part of what the sociopath talks you into believing about yourself, that you have to be this way or that way or the other way. I've learned that I can be whoever I want to be because God's always there, because I'm nobody, so I can mix in with any crowd, anywhere, any circumstance, any situation in the world, and they think I'm part of it if that's what's going to get me over to make the next hour work before I get shot, because I've certainly been in circumstances like that many times. And it's always a part of God leaning us into that, walking back through our life and realizing we don't have to be tempted, we don't have to take it anymore. We can be like kids and completely happy, and yet highly, highly gifted and intelligent, capable. We can fix anything and anyone. There's nothing you have to learn about God. You just have to understand that you need not be tempted, and you will become as God is. It's a gift, a revelation, a truth. And it's an honor to know you. If you can all in this room hear that, and I know you do. And if you can all in the world hear that from each other. And then we disappear as physical bodies in this trap, and we're not tempted, and we look through everything, and then we'll spend 90% of our time in this condition. And we don't have to be the world champion like Pedro or like Greg here many times in martial arts. It's just a given. You're just there. It just is. Thank you. We talked before about breathing exercises. If you're a little bit athletic like everyone in this room is, you don't have to do that. Your breathing is more rhythmic, more full, more regular than the average person. But if you train it a little bit, like in Zen meditation, where you let your whole sensorial field fall down with you in the breath, in the depths of the abdomen. You'll feel the abdominal walls expanding and releasing with your breathing. Just do that for 30 seconds on our own. Thank you. All we're doing is taking our concentration away from the thinking mind. The prefrontal cortex is just looking for something. It's an organ of, it's a sense, like your sense of touch or taste or whatever. And if you fall down with your breath to your abdomen, feel the abdominal walls expanding and releasing. We're not doing this long, I'm just suggesting it, and you can sense it, and that's all you have to do. And then you do it for a few minutes at home. Something amazing will happen. You'll be out of your head, and you'll just sense. And there's a deeper sense, there's a sweetness, there's a purity, there's a wonder to this sense. It's your spirit. Your spirit is God. It's not less than or different than. And then with the prefrontal cortex, first you can drop it down there, and then to make sure, the locking mechanism on it is to, like, it was originally done, you just simply put your concentration out of your head on the floor in front of you. A Buddhist monk would put it 18 inches on the floor in front of you. And after a minute or 2 or 5, something enormous will happen to you where you, first the sensorial field is quiet, so all your emotions fall down to your abdomen, and you feel very calm and quiet. All your senses fall down there, and then you make sure that it locks there permanently by staring at the floor in front of you or the wall like Bodhidharma did, the Shaolin monks and all that. That was because of his illumination. All of civilization of the world has been very touched. All the Japanese gardens, the samurai culture, in its fineness. You know, you did samurai, you did swords, you also did flower arranging and so forth. You understand? It was an artistic life, it was part of the spiritual discipline. And so you get your sensorial field down in the deep in your gut, mental concentration out of your head, and then you'll turn inside out. And all these things I'm saying about the spiritual consciousness will be yours. You won't be this body. And then you can jump from 90% of your day being spiritual to 105 or 100,000,005%. Because there is a God, there's an infinite cosmos. This isn't from a book, these aren't just words, and that's who you are. And many people experience this in many different ways. Falling in love is one magical trick that God is giving to everyone, just to see we can appreciate one another in a very grateful, decent, powerful, eternal way. Open our hearts. And it's not open our hearts stupidly. It's we open our hearts and we're not taken in because we don't want or need anything or anyone. It's quite a wondrous experience to see Him, to know Him, to become as He is, to become as you are. I spoke a few weeks ago about the way God looks at us. It doesn't matter the worst criminal in the world. God is looking with absolute a love that you cannot understand. Because if we're to be not taken in, we have to understand that God is not taken in, and there is a God. And this entire consciousness of the world, if you read the writings of the saints or whatever, you'll see that it's not even it's infinitely less than a hairline. It doesn't exist. There is an infinite ocean of love, of bliss, of kindness, of warmth, of decency, but if you imagine 100 trillion, quadrillion hydrogen bombs going off at the same time, of happiness, of decency, of wonder, and just in many dimensions and rooms of it where you can step in and out of. You can see. One day I wanted to say if there was people in outer space, so I sat quietly and waited a couple of minutes at night while I was laying in my bed, and I started communicating with other star systems and all, with people who are completely involved in spiritual, and I've had those experiences, but that's meaningless, and I don't want to go there for a moment. What I'm saying, whatever it is, you'll see it, you'll know it, you'll be there. This world is very small, and no one's that tough out there. No one's going to be tougher than Pedro or Carlos here, or my teacher Greg here. They're simply, it's not that. There's nothing to react to, nothing to want, nothing to need, nothing to fight for. And if you get very quiet in yourself, you'll walk through walls in ways that you cannot believe. And there'll all be psychic, spiritual moments, and you'll see it, you'll have glimpses of eternity. And so we can live 105% there today and forever. The whole thing is to trust that there is a God, and that there's nothing wrong with you. Everything in your life has been a temptation to make you less than what you are. And that's it. There's no more to say. Except the experience of illumination is yours. Your friendship with God is yours. And God is your protector. In my life, when I first saw Pedro, I knew I was here to protect him, which sounds bizarrely hilarious. The same experience I had with Greg, because they were doing the right thing. And God looks at us, and his job is to protect us. And if we fall back into his arms, it's a delicate, mystical, it's beyond normal love. It's just, and the whole world will be enveloped in the warm sunlight of a nice Sunday church morning, and that'll be the end of it. And it's in consciousness. And that's all there is to it. Thank you, Greg. Thank you.